What is up, fellow HEMA practitioners and sword enthusiasts alike? I'm Mark, if you don't know me. I'm looking at two synthetic Montantes today. I'm looking at the green hilted one on the right, which is the Purple Heart synthetic Montante, and the one on the left, which is the Blackfencer synthetic Montante. To start off the comparison and review, I'm going to go with the Purple Heart here. Mine has a green cord wrap hilt, as you can see. The cord wrap is actually standard. I don't know if Christian has updated the site specifically for that, but he doesn't use the plastic or leather or whatever it was. I'm sure he could if he requested it, but the standard now is cord wrapped, and you can request all sorts of different colors. Mine also has the plastic hilt on it, though now Christian Darce has actually created a new steel guard that can go onto them, and he's updated the site so that you can order one of these with the steel guard on it already. You can also get it separately. I think it's about $77 and retrofit it on here, but you are going to have to drill some holes in this area of the blade here, I think, in order to put it on. I haven't done it myself, but I think that's how it's going to go. Anyways, moving on. Going down from the cord wrap and the plastic grip, we have our little parrying hooks, so to speak, that some of us are fond of and some of us aren't. I'm not too big of a fan of the parrying hooks on the Purple Heart here, because they don't really offer all that much in terms of hand protection if you were going to try to do any of the half sorting deals, if you wanted to practice some of the plays against a spear or other sort of pole arm. If anything, it acts more like a shield on a fetish fit, and I think that doesn't really apply to this sort of weapon. It's better than nothing, sure, but I would like to see an option with more pronounced parrying hooks maybe in the future. So that's my thoughts on that. Moving down here, we have our nice little flared tip on the end that you get with all the Type 3s of Purple Heart, which makes it very nice if you're practicing against guys with kendo gear on, so that way this won't go in between the bars and poke their eye out, though I wouldn't want to spar with this thing anyway. And that's a good transition point. I think this thing weighs 4 pounds 13 ounces. It's not that heavy, to be sure, except when you take into consideration the balance from the cross. It is about 7 inches away from the cross, so this thing is going to hit like a club. And combine that with the weight, you don't want to spar with this at all. If you were to do so, it does have some flex, though not much. Kind of struggling to get this to flex here. If I hold it on the end, it can get a little bit of wobble here, but this isn't really meant for sparring, I don't think. And there's a whole discussion you can have about Montante trainers and sparring, but I think that's a different video. But this is primarily going to be a solo training tool, and that's really its best uses, I think. It flows really well, it handles greatly. It's going to really build up strength and endurance the more you train with it. I always feel the burn in my right shoulder. That might be from my technique or just from the plate, not sure. But it's a great workout, and it's really good for what you do, and that's that. So I think I neglected the pommel here. The pommel is their standard Type 3 style. I don't know if you can tell, but mine has gotten a bit rusty. I guess you can order a stainless steel pommel as an option. I've seen it on their site, but I'm guessing that based on what I got here, that the standard steel pommel is going to be standard. So if you don't want to worry about rusting too much, I would try to order the stainless steel pommel instead. It's going to be the same. I don't know if it's going to weigh any different, but that's certainly an option. So after we've looked at all of this, we've weighted it, we've taken the length, we've done all that good stuff. In the end, the price for this comes to $160, I believe. Yeah, $160 with the plastic hilt. So that's not too bad at all. I mean, that's definitely less than a lot of steels that are out there. I think the wooden version is $99, but I don't really like the look of the hilt, so that's why I chose this one. But all in all, for the money, I like it. But there are a few issues, as most things tend to have. I don't know if it's going to show up really well, but when I ordered mine in December, I ended up getting it in January. Long story, Christian and Natasha were on on a vacation of sorts, I'm guessing, Christmas holidays and whatnot. But I got it, and it, of course, was being shipped in the extreme cold. And when I got it, there is this slight set right at the cross here that I've been having to deal with ever since. From this angle, it bows a little bit upward, and so when it's extended, the angle is just slightly off, and so that messes with me a bit mentally when I'm training with it. So I'm currently working to try to get the set fixed out. I've been putting a lot of weight and trying to bend it back. It hasn't really worked out so far. I can get a bit of a counter bend, but it always goes back. I think that just comes to the fact that the set is where the plastic is thickest, and so that's going to be the hardest to correct. I'm going to try to borrow a heat gun or something in the future to get that fixed. But c'est la vie. Other than that, it's great. I would highly recommend it. The cord wrapping is very nice. It's very smooth. It is a little roughly finished because there is some glue that you can feel under here where you glued it, and you can see it at the cross down here as well. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention is this plastic comes separate in separate pieces, and I don't know if you can see the crease here, but you clamp it together with these Allen screws here. That alone isn't the issue, but the finishing kind of is. I don't know if you can tell by looking at it, but you see there's a little bit of a gap in here. And when I was practicing with it one day, I tend to keep my hand fairly close to the guard. And so when I was practicing, these spots rubbed up against my finger and took chunks of skin out. So what I ended up doing was I took it apart and took a knife to scrape these things to make them a bit more smooth, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. So aside from the little bit of issue with the set and maybe some rusting on here, I don't really have any problems with this. This is a great product, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's picking up Montante or who is experienced with it and wants a trainer that they can maybe do light sparring with, though you'd definitely want heavy protection with it. So yeah, $160 plus shipping from Virginia. So wherever you're getting it, wherever you're ordering it to, it's going to be different. But yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. All right, so next up is the Blackfencer synthetic Montante. I just got this one fairly recently, about 4 or 5 days ago. I've been practicing with it a lot. So before I even get into the stats, I want to point out something very important here, is that the Blackfencer's products, I think, are based out of the UK, so you're going to have a very difficult time getting them because I don't think they ship to the US. I got this one by ordering from RJ McKeehan. He runs South Coast Swords out of California. So I live on the East Coast of the United States, so when we get to pricing and shipping, that's going to definitely become a factor because that's the only place I know where you can get these. But with that out of the way, let's start from the pommel and work our way down, a little bit more organized than with Purple Heart. So it's a pretty nice pommel. I gotta say, it's a bit bigger than the Purple Hearts. It's very smooth, hasn't rusted yet, it's nice and new. Then we go down here to this cord here. It's brown cord, nothing particularly shiny or nice about it. It's actually very rough, which I really like because it gives a lot of good grip and a lot of control over it, so that's really nice. And then we get to one of my favorite features, is the steel ringed crossguard that we've got, and I got the protectors on here in case I do end up sparring with anybody. That is probably my biggest criticism of the earlier Purple Heart synthetic swords, is that they don't have a steel crossguard. They're kind of big and chunky, so that's a little bit of artificial, I don't want to say artificial difficulty, but some issues that you wouldn't encounter in real swords due to a very wide and thick guard. That's not the case with this one. And it even has these very nice large side rings. They're actually big enough for me to fit my hand through. I don't know if there's any particular benefit for rings that big, but I'm not complaining. Lots of protection except against thrusts. And then we move down to the ricasso, and we have nice and pronounced parrying hooks. Now, considering this is a synthetic, and synthetics slide and bounce a bit more, especially than steel, they're not going to do that much. I did a little bit of an experiment and found that it slides and it sort of skids off. when you're sliding down the blade. I've been told, or rather I've seen a YouTube video, I'm going to try to link that down, but that these people used a sort of grip tape down the edge of these in order to cause the blades to stick a bit more like sharp swords would. So that's definitely a home option that you can use to make this a better sword simulator if you're sparring or drilling. So moving down the blade, like the Purple Heart, we've got a fuller, slightly different. Moving all the way down, try not to knock out my window here, and we got our nice rounded tip. The blade is nice and thick. The tip is definitely thick enough to not go through a kendo helmet or a men, if you've actually practiced kendo and know what I'm talking about. So that's the sword as a whole. Now let's get into some more specifics. So we talked about the Purple Heart and its lack of flexibility. Well, the Blackfencer, it can flex quite well. A lot more than the Purple Heart. See how much? Now I'm struggling. And because of that, it can take a set, but because it's so flexible, if it takes a set, it's very easy to fix, which is a really good thing. And that also means that if you are sparring, not recommended, but if you are sparring with this and you land a thrust, the sword is going to bend a lot more than the Purple Heart, so it's not going to feel like they're getting stabbed with an actual spear or something like that. So you can actually hit people that you like with this and not worry about too many repercussions later. So, moving on. Oh yeah, I didn't get the stats for this. So the stats for the Blackfencer, it's actually quite a bit longer than the Purple Heart. If I just bring this over here for comparison, it's actually longer in the blade, not necessarily so much in the hilt, but it is 63.8 inches long in total, which is really cool. I like that. It's much more in the larger sword category that I like. And then the weight is interesting. It's actually 4 pounds and 4 ounces. South Coast listed as 4.4. Did some math, that just comes out to 4 ounces. So, yeah, that's interesting because it's not only longer and more flexible, but it's also lighter. So it's not going to hit as hard as the Purple Heart is, especially considering the point of balance. It is about 4.7 inches from the cross. So it's balanced more towards the hand. It's lighter and more flexible. So what this leads me to believe is that Blackfencer really set out to make a sword that is much safer to spar with, while keeping it within historical specs, which is a really neat idea because, I mean, when you practice a weapon, you're going to want to spar with it, of course. Being a Montante, it's not so much a good idea because the nature of the weapon makes it dangerous, as I'm sure a lot of you might know already. But Blackfencer, I think, did a pretty good job of striking a balance between a sort of weapons-grade practicing implement and a sparring implement. So that's really good. I like it so far. And I've actually been practicing with this one more because not only because of the weird set I've got in my Purple Heart, but also just because it's easier on me. It's really hot and I don't have much physical endurance. I'm more of a strength guy personally. So with this, I'm using it to get more in shape. And in addition, due to the fact that it is lighter and balanced closer to the hand, even though it's still far enough out so that you can let the momentum ride when you're swinging it, I think this is a better weapon compared to the Purple Heart, at least for beginners to start out with, due to the weight and the balance and the flex, so that if they mess something up, they're going to know it, whereas Purple Heart's going to be a bit more forgiving. So that's my thoughts on this. I think it's a really great implement, but it's not without its faults, as most everything is. So you can almost think of the idea of it being a sparring implement as a sort of con, but like I just said, it's not really that big of a deal because it's just different types of training for different people, different levels, that sort of thing. But the main issue I have is very similar to the Purple Heart, actually. If you take a good look here, you'll notice that these rings are very angular on the inside, and I felt that first day I got it, right here in the thumb. Bled like crazy. It was nasty. So Blackfencer, if you do ever end up seeing this review, I would definitely want you guys to try filing these rings on the inside down a bit so that they're smoother, or make them completely cylindrical, so that way you don't worry about, that way people don't have to worry about cutting their hands when they're practicing with the darn thing. So what I'm doing to compensate is I'm just sort of choking back a little bit, which isn't too bad because that not only like gives it a bit more reach, but it also puts the balance a little bit further. So it's not a lost cause, but I would still like that to be a little bit safer. I might take a file or a Dremel or something to smooth it down a little bit in the future. So you can almost consider that to be an advantage in the Purple Heart's case, because since it's a plastic grip, you can just take a knife or a razor or something, just sort of file the rough patches down a bit, and you're fine. But this, you gotta bust out the big tools if you're gonna try to grind down the steel. So with all that said, the Blackfencer at South Coast Swords is $143. So it's actually cheaper, despite all these different advantages that it has over the Purple Heart. But like I said earlier, South Coast Swords is out of California, probably Southern California at that. So if you're living anywhere on the east coast of the U.S., shipping is going to be expensive. It was $100 for me. So it ended up being a bit more expensive by maybe about 30 or 40 bucks than the Purple Heart was. But I don't regret that at all, because I've been wanting one of these ever since it came out, just because it looks more like a sword. It has the features I like. So if I were to choose between the two, I would definitely pick this. But that is not to say that the Purple Heart is bad and by any stretch of the means. They're both really, really excellent swords. They're durable. They are great for whatever kinds of training you want. You've got one for beginners and sparring, one for more hardcore drilling and that sort of thing. And overall, they're really great. I would buy either one. Just I hope this is a helpful review and comparison. And if anyone has questions, I'll try to address them, or maybe even do a follow-up if I missed anything. So thanks for listening, guys, and I hope you enjoyed, and keep practicing, keep being awesome.